Persona 5 Royal is finally making its debut on non-PlayStation platforms, so Xbox, PC, and Nintendo Switch. I'm primarily a Nintendo Switch player myself, but I actually have played Persona 5 on my partner's PS4. If that weren't the case, I'd be ridiculously excited for this Switch release myself, but instead I decided to make a little review of the game geared toward those of you who this would be your first Persona game ever, you don't know too much about the series, but it's coming to your platform of choice, and maybe you're curious about it. Maybe you remember those memes that were like, "You never see it coming," or you saw Joker's epic Smash debut, or whatever it was that piques your interest. I'm going to go over a few key elements of the game to help inform whether you might like it. But as a quick introduction, Persona 5 is a story-driven, dungeon-crawling JRPG with turn-based battles and life sim elements that revolves around high schoolers turned vigilantes with supernatural powers in modern Tokyo. If that sounds like a lot, it's because it is. Obviously, I'm biased. I love the game, but I know that it's not for everyone, so I will be fair and recognize the stuff that you might not like too. And I'll probably make several comparisons to Nintendo games because that is my main frame of reference more so than other JRPGs. The review is spoiler free, though I will show some gameplay footage from early game, like the first hour or two, omitting plot heavy scenes, but if you want to go in completely blind, feel free to just listen to the video. Timestamps are in the description and on screen. Feel free to jump around to what interests you, and let's get started with the question, can you jump right into Persona 5 Royal as your first Persona game? The answer is yes. Persona 5 is the 5th mainline entry in the series, but the games are not at all connected other than small Easter eggs here and there. So you can absolutely start with 5. I started with 4 and 3, but Persona 5 Royal was my partner's very first Persona game. It gives you tutorials and all the context that you need, so you'll be fine. There's also quite a selection of difficulty options, so if you're intimidated, you can easily still play on easy or safe mode. The word Royal just means that it's an enhanced version of the base Persona 5 game. It doesn't lack anything from the base game, but it adds a ton, including an optional additional semester in the storyline, which is a huge chunk of gameplay and story. Let's talk about story, in very vague terms because I do want you to experience all the reveals spoiler-free, even in the early game. Your character is a transfer student with a delinquent reputation, starting at a new high school in modern Tokyo where mysterious freak accidents seem to be occurring. There's no character customization or gender options. Joker is a preset character, but still a relatively silent protagonist that you can make dialogue choices for, similar to Link. On your first day of school, you and a new friend are mysteriously transported to what seems like an alternate reality, which we learn is called the Metaverse, which sounded a lot cooler before Mark Zuckerberg started talking about it. You meet a strange cat-like friend, learn the ways this other world may influence reality, and discover hidden powers within yourself, the ability to summon personas, powerful supernatural entities based on various myth and folklore that represent yourself. The game proceeds with an even mix of daily student life and exploring dungeons and uncovering the plot. There are lots of exciting twists and turns in the story as your main party grows and starts to uncover the mysteries of the metaverse and the evil forces at work. You're definitely going to be hooked on the story. But this is a good time to mention the story is very, very, very long. There are a lot of cutscenes and a lot of dialogue, to the point that this game could be considered part visual novel, honestly. It's entertaining, it's fully voice acted, but it's a lot. You're gonna want to grab your popcorn and treat it like a movie for some play sessions. You can have the dialogue autoplay, which is convenient, and you can also fast forward, though I don't really see the point of playing the game if you're gonna just fast forward through the dialogue because the story is a huge part of the game in my opinion. So if you don't like dialogue heavy experiences, then this might not be the game for you. Another more serious warning is that the story can be very heavy, dark, and adult. I certainly found parts of the game upsetting and hard to watch, so if you're sensitive to certain topics, do keep that in mind. I will link a list of content warnings in the description. Now, a final note on story. As I mentioned, Persona 5 Royal has an optional added story section at the end, a third semester, and it's amazing. I love the new ending. I think it's way more interesting and compelling than how things ended in the base game, which again, you'll still get to play through fully. There's just more afterwards. Now, you won't be able to unlock this ending section unless you reach certain relationship levels with characters and make certain choices. I won't say what they are, but I will leave a link in the description to a website that says how to do it without spoiling the outcomes. But it's still spoiler adjacent territory, so be warned. Next, let's discuss dungeons and battles. I love the battle system in this game. It is such a good time. There are two types of dungeons. The first is the main story dungeons, which each have their own consistent layout with some light puzzle elements, which are fun but not usually too hard to figure out. Usually. And when navigating these dungeons, you have the ability to sort of sneak around and hide behind objects to ambush enemies, which is super fun, and the dungeons are all themed to reflect that particular part of the story. The second type is a larger dungeon with randomly generated maps that you navigate in a different manner. I love this because it brings the best of both worlds from previous Persona games and from JRPGs in general with those two types of maps, providing different experiences that changes it up and keeps things interesting while still leading you to the same types of tried and true turn-based battles. Now, in a game with turn-based battles, I find the question is always, do they get tedious? And in my opinion, the answer is no. In fact, I think this game has the best and most fun turn-based battle system I've ever played. First of all, you've got catchy music and stylish visuals to look at, which certainly can't hurt. In battle, you get 4 of your party members, and swapping them throughout the dungeoning really refreshes things and mixes up what powers you have available, as well as sort of, what dialogue you're hearing, what special end cards and critical hit animations you're seeing. And on your own character, you can swap between tons of personas, all of which can be fused with one another to create new, unique personas with different powers. They're kind of like Pokemon. They each have different elemental strengths and weaknesses, as do the enemies, and you can capture the enemies to add to your persona collection. But unlike Pokemon, there's no ridiculous typing system. The weaknesses are just things that you find out by trial and error, and then once you find it, that information is stored, and I think it works pretty well for the flow of battle in this case. You can play with a gotta catch 'em all attitude of wanting to collect or fuse every persona at least once. You can spend a lot of time on that, or you can just get new personas every once in a while when you need to. That's what I tend to do. You can also choose to use your melee weapons or your gun. And once you've knocked down all your enemies, you can choose to negotiate with them for items, money, or joining your team. Or you can just beat them to death. Point being, choice. There's a lot of choices available to you for how you want to approach battle, and no one correct way to beat an enemy. Even with the persona skills, you're making choices about whether to use elemental attacks or physical attacks or buffs or debuffs. It's just endless amounts of player choice, which could be overwhelming to some, but I really like it. And just in general, the flow of battle is quick and snappy from one turn to the next, so it never feels slow. With the caveat that this was on the PS4, and I really don't know if the Switch version especially is going to be as snappy. Current evidence suggests that it should run fine, but I definitely recommend looking into this once the game is out. I might pin a comment with that information below. But yeah, the battles should flow really, really quickly. All right, now let's talk about the time management and life sim elements. When you're not in battle, you're living Joker's everyday life, getting quizzed in class, going to the movies, grabbing a bite with friends. The game follows a calendar where some days are completely devoted to story cutscenes or time skips, but most days you will have school and then some free time to choose how you want to spend it. Whether that's dungeoning, spending time with characters, or boosting your stats with various activities around town or making some money working a part-time job. There's lots of different ways to spend your time. The dungeons will always have a deadline associated with them, so your time is limited and you really can't do everything. Try not to get stuck thinking, what's the best way to spend my time? Unless you're like me and want to romance a late game character, that's when you get out the pen and paper, start making a schedule. I do quite like the time management system because you get to choose what to do, if you're more in the mood for battles or daily life. And brilliantly, I look forward to both parts of the game. Unlike something like Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I love, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I found myself annoyed to be back at the school doing the daily life tasks since the battling is much more fun. In Persona, both are peak fun for me, which is awesome. Characters and relationships. I think the game has an excellent cast of characters, each with a lot of personality, a balance of endearing, silly traits and more serious traits and backstories. It's really fun to get to know these characters. The relationship system is called confidants. Kinda like Fire Emblem supports, the confidants are side stories that can't really affect the main plot since you can do them whenever, but they do have an impact on gameplay, which I think is really cool. All characters are represented by different major arcana from the traditional tarot deck. I would love to do a video specifically on the tarot inspiration, let me know if you'd be interested in that. But as you spend time with each character, their rank with this arcana increases. Personas also have these arcana categories associated with them, and your friendship levels boost EXP for persona fusions of the corresponding arcana, allowing you to make more powerful personas. The relationships also allow the character to perform certain abilities in battle, also kind of like Pokemon, or other types of benefits if it's a non-party character. The romance is more of an afterthought, but you can choose to date one or more of the female characters. I think there's a great array of characters to choose from. I picked someone from the later game, and I think she and Joker make an adorable couple, though obviously it is a shame that there aren't any gay romance options. For those of you who that's very important to, that may be a major point against this game. But the dating is fun. It does unlock some special scenes that are very wholesome, so definitely recommend choosing at least one partner. And now the last and most important category, the style factor. I think one of the main reasons that I and a lot of others are drawn to Persona games is just the very stylish vibes created by the music and visuals. The aesthetics are off the charts. All the main characters are designed with a particular flair. You literally transform into masked, costumed heroes in the dungeons. I already mentioned the cool, snappy visuals of the battles, the end cards after the all-out attacks, but also the ending screen following battle, and even the pause menus and the UI in general. Every little graphical element of this game has this consistent flavor that's really fun and over the top. Speaking of over the top, there's something called Showtime attacks in battle, which are these overly theatric and frankly ridiculous attacks that I love. There's literally no point in them being this ridiculous. It's just for the fun. It's just for the style factor. The soundtrack only enhances the vibes and sometimes just steals the show for me. The way there are different versions of the same tracks and the moments those changes in version happen in the story is amazing. I was floored with some of the musical moments in this game. In fact, during the first dungeon, I still wasn't 100% sold on the game until two specific music moments. And after the second one, I was like, that's it, I'm in. This game is amazing. And it wasn't just about the music, but the soundtrack just really enhances parts of the game that are already really cool. The Persona series always tries to make you feel cool, and I feel like 5 is the first one where the graphics caught up to that feel and really immerse you in the awesomeness of this world. You're gonna feel cool, and isn't that what's most important in life? In conclusion, Persona 5 Royal has an intriguing story, fun battles that flow well, and characters that you want to root for. But it's also epically long, with tons of dialogue and some really dark, heavy themes. Though I would say that it's also quite uplifting. Are you planning to try Persona 5 Royal? Have you already played it? If so, what do you think? Let me know in the comments and consider subscribing to my channel. I do make game reviews as well as discussions about games and their real-world inspirations. Stay tuned for a special Halloween video coming soon in a similar style to my Breath of the Wild video last year. Should be lots of fun if I can keep my voice, my goodness. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.